Integration testing is the last type of testing in Flutter, and integration testing tests whether the complete app works properly, whether you can navigate between screens properly, whether the right things show up here and there, and even whether services that are connected to it are working properly. Now, the way you do integration testing is similar to widget testing, but first you need to run the whole application. So you run the application, then you press stuff or do whatever you need to do within that application, and then you get a finder similar to the widget testing, and you check to make sure that you're finding the right amount of things that you're looking for on the screen. So integration testing we're going to do for this lesson is going to be on the Twitter clone, because an integration testing for the To-Do app will be a little bit more boring. With the Twitter app, we can actually go through the whole login cycle, look for tweets, and then log back out. Now, there's something I want to mention here. So when we're going to be doing this logging in and logging out, we're going to be doing it with the actual Firebase service, because I wanted to show you how you can, have a complete integration test of everything that's connected to your application to make sure everything's working fine. But there are reasons you would and wouldn't want to do testing with Firebase on your application. So reasons you would are easy. It's kind of cool, and you can make sure that everything surrounding your application is working properly. But reasons you might not want to test with Firebase or actually any other service that's not connected to your app is that it's not part of your application. So let's say you run into an error that your integration test doesn't pass because of something. It could not be an error within your application at all. It could just be the Firebase databases are down and now your tests aren't passing and you're not allowed to deploy, even though that has nothing to do with your application. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. It'll depend on what job you have or what you're doing, whether you would be doing integration testing with Firebase. But in this case, we're going to do it with Firebase because I think it's cool and this is just for demo purposes. So here's the test we're going to run. We're going to first open the application. We're going to type in our email. We're going to type in our secure password. That's just 123456. We're going to log in. We're going to check whether we see this first and only tweet. And we're going to click this button at the top, and then we're going to sign out. So that's the test we're going to do. And we're going to do all those actions with only code. Now, to add an integration test, we need to create a new folder called integration test. And this needs to be in the root of our directory. Now, within here, we're going to add a file. I'm just going to call it integration. It's right above. I'm not spelling it right. Integration test. There you go. .dart. Now, very similar with the other tests, we need a main function here. And similar to how we did widget tests, we're going to do test widgets. First, going to need a description. I'm going to call it login, check for tweet, and then log out. That's the test we're going to do. And then we're going to need the actual test where we're going to have a tester. And there we go. And then make sure we import that Flutter testing library and also make that asynchronous. Now we want to import our application into this. So we have the main.dart file here. And we're going to import it as app. So now to run it, we're going to do app.main. And we're going to run the main function within our application. Now, all this should work if you're using an emulator. But if you wanted to test on a physical device, which I think I would recommend you do because this is an integration test, making sure that everything within your application works. You want to test it on a real device. You're going to want to import a package called integration test. Now, this is actually provided by Flutter, so it's not a package that's made by the community. It's made by the actual Flutter team. And then before you run the actual test, you want to make sure you add this line. So this line just makes sure that everything is initialized in order to run tests on your actual physical device. Like I said, for us, we don't actually need it because we do it on an emulator, but I'm going to keep it in there just in case I want to run tests later on a physical device here. Now to get to the rest of our integration test. So when we run the application, we want to make sure we see this login to Twitter sign. So after we run it, we want to await the tester and pump and settle. So for the widget test, we just used pump. But pump and settle goes a little bit further and waits for everything to settle down, make sure all the actions are executed before it stops loading in the frames. Now we can define our login text here. I'm going to do find the text log into Twitter. And then after that, we're going to expect that our login text finds one widget like that on the home screen. And now let's actually run this integration test so you can see what happens. Now what's going to happen is when we run it, it's actually going to show up on this emulator. So let me walk through the rest of the test so you can see what's actually going to happen. So we're going to put in an email here, times 4 at gmail.com. We're going to have our code do that. We're going to put in a password. We're going to want to click this login button. We're going to want to look for this text. Then we want to click this button to show our little navigation window, and then we're going to click sign out again, because this screen we're not going to see anymore. So now to run our widget tests, you can click run. And actually this is the integration test, so it's not a widget test, so we're actually going to have to wait a little bit longer for this test to actually run. It has to build the pod file and do all that stuff before it actually launches on a physical device. And it's going to be quick, so you make sure you pay attention. There we go, it's launching. And there, it was really quick. You might have missed it. But what happened is it showed the screen. It found that this login to Twitter exists, and our test passed. So now we need to add all the rest of this stuff. So first thing, we need to log in. We're going to find those specific login widgets. The first one is the email widgets. So let's add a key. We're going to give it a value key, and I'm going to call it login email. I'm going to copy and paste the same thing for the password. But instead of login email, I'm going to say login password. And then we're going to need to click the login button at the end. Which is this text button, and we're just going to call it login button. While I'm doing these keys, I might as well define the rest of them. So once we're logged in, we're going to be on the home screen. We're going to have our drawer over here that we're going to be opening within this gesture detector. So we're going to put in here, we're going to call it profile pic. And then lastly, we're going to have the actual sign out button, which I'm going to call sign out. Okay, so we're ready to finish up this test. There's going to be a bunch of these finders that we need, so let's just knock them all out. We're going to need 5 of them. We have the login email. We have login password. We have login button. We're going to have the profile pic. And we're going to have the sign out button. And we're going to find them by their key. So value, key, login, email. This one's going to be login password. This one's going to be login button, profile pic, and sign out. Okay, so all of these are defined. Now we just need to use them. To do that, we await. We use a tester. We're going to do add text. And it's called enter text. So for the login email, which we found already here, and have login email, the text we're going to add was the tadas4@gmail.com. So the email's in. Let's add in our password. Do login password. And the text in here is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the last thing we need to do is actually tap that login button. And after we tap it, we want to pump and settle again. Make sure all the frames load in, that the whole login function gets executed, and we can check whether the things we want to see on the screen are there. So what happened here? We enter the text for our email, we enter the text for our password, we tap the login button, and we wait until all the frames load and all that stuff is executed. And then we can do a check. So for this check, we get set up another finder. And I'm going to call this tweet name. I'm going to look for the text of my name, which should be the name of that first tweet that we saw. So this should be the name of the person with the one tweet, and we're going to call it tweet name. And we should find only one tweet with that. And then lastly, once we find it, we want to run back to the tester. We want to tap the button at the top, which was called the profile picture. Pump and settle again, because that should open up the nav bar. So I want to make sure that UI happens. And then we're going to copy paste this, because we're going to be tapping the sign out button. And we're going to pump and settle. And then we'll be back where we started, where we should find one login to Twitter at the end. Okay, so save it, and now we could run it again. And the cool thing you'll see about this time we run it, you're going to actually see the login screen, and you're going to see all the stuff getting typed in there, and the button getting pressed, and then us getting logged back out again. But it's, of course, going to happen very fast, because this is the code running it, not us slow humans with our little mouse dragging. So there we go. It's getting launched now. You see the home screen? We saw the text getting filled in. Oh, and that's how quick it goes. It did all this stuff we defined, and the test passed perfectly. So with this integration, what do we do? Well, we were able to log in to our Firebase account. We're able to check that the tweet got loaded in from our Firebase database with the name of this. And then we were able to click the navigation bar and open it up, and then sign out again, get back where we started. So that's integration testing.